Conversations with Niki is brought to you by studyapps.co.za, South Africa's leading education app for tablets. Well, welcome to Conversations with Niki, the show where you are entertained, inspired and informed. I'm Niki Seberini. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's wonderful to be with you, and I'd like to welcome our syndication partner listeners up here in Joburg. It's Eldo's FM and Chai FM. Port Alfred, Kawi FM, West Coast FM in Namibia, MC 90.3 FM in Plet, Knysna FM, Wild Coast FM in East London, and of course Bay FM in PE. And yes, the good news is today I'm giving away the Colpad 2 7-inch Wi-Fi tablet. You've been waiting for it. You've been liking my Facebook page. Thank you so much. And at the end of the show, we're going to be giving that away. So just don't hold your breath, but it is happening today. Yay, yay, yay. Now, let's be honest, because one just needs to read the news and listen to the radio and watch TV to get very depressed. I'm not talking about politics, and I'm not talking about an upcoming election. I'm talking about the economic landscape, which isn't looking very promising in South Africa at the moment. I mean, the rand is weak. The Reserve Bank raised the repo rate by 50 base points. The price of petrol has gone up significantly, and we all know that when that happens, it affects the price of everything. And unemployment is sitting at 24.1%, so it is pretty bleak. But before you get really depressed and before you switch off the radio, I'm going to encourage you to continue listening, because today's show is about putting the ball in your court. It's about taking the bull by the horns, and I can bring in many more idioms and cliches, but it really is a very important show, because this episode of Conversations with Niki is about creating your own employment, starting your own business. I have in the studio Allon Raiz, who is the founder and CEO of Raizcorp, the only privately held, unfunded, profitable business incubator on the African continent, and is supporting in excess of 400 businesses. And Allon is going to be sharing his knowledge around starting a business, as well as coaching on air during the show someone who has started her business and has fantastic ideas, but needs to do something to take this business to the next level. So I'd like to start by welcoming you, Allon. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy man, so a lot of people are going to benefit from this, so thanks.
Thanks.
So, Allon, I think the first question we have to just look at is the difference between being an entrepreneur and a business owner. Is there a difference? Are you automatically an entrepreneur if you own a business?
You know, for me, the definition, there's no such thing as an entrepreneur. Let's just start there. If you look at what they call the psychological typology of an entrepreneur, there's no X set of characteristics that make up an entrepreneur. Every single book that's been written around the psychological makeup will say there's a higher probability of you being an entrepreneur if you have these, but de facto, if you are an extrovert, you won't, and this and this, you won't necessarily become one.
Okay.
So I think it's an important point to start off by saying that there's no such thing as an entrepreneur. So as a definitive thing, as a business owner,
you being the co-founder of the Entrepreneurs Organization South Africa, etc., etc. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's all different types. They're tall, they're short. They come from wealthy backgrounds. They come from poor backgrounds. They, extroverts, introverts. It's a name. It's a spirit. It's a way. It's a way of thinking. So in that sense, that's why I was going. In that sense, there is a difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur has a different mentality to growing a business, and that's generally broken up into three types. There's a growth entrepreneur it has a mindset around growth, sometimes at all costs. A lifestyle entrepreneur that's interested in building a business to a certain level and not beyond. Generally family business or small businesses that sort of stop at 10, 15 people. And then there's the one-man band. And unfortunately in South Africa, 67% of all businesses in South Africa are one-man bands. Only 1% of all businesses employ more than 10 people. So by that definition, there's a difference. but I'm very reluctant to agree to any definitional
Yeah, I hear you.
because all over the world people have different definitions.
Okay, so we hear politicians talking about the economy in South Africa and how important it is for small businesses, that whole area of commerce to really grow. Now, you're talking about 60% of that one part of entrepreneurs, they're on their own. So is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
No, it's a bad thing. 67% of entrepreneurs are not employing. So if we want to create employment, if that's what the government's telling us that we should be doing, the focus needs to be slightly different. I don't believe a survivalist is necessarily an entrepreneur, in the sense that it doesn't mean that they aren't, but if the mindset is just to make as much as I need every day, then they're a survivalist. For me, a business owner is somebody who builds something that exists outside of them. In other words, there's value created outside of that, outside of them. So if I'm not at work today, there's still a possibility of me actually earning an income. I'm here in studio. I've got a business there that's producing value for clients. I'll be paid today no matter what. There's a business. But somebody who is maybe in a technical position where they are doing the doing, that is not necessarily a business in my mind. That to me is a vocation.
Okay, so it's important that we look at something like that, because maybe, I mean, you've spoken about a huge percentage of people who are in that position, and maybe not necessarily happily in that position, because if something does happen to them, that's their income gone. How does one then push it to that next level? Is it a complete change of mindset? Yeah.
So the first thing is that the third level is the survivalist, the difference between all those three categories. And let me just start off by saying it's very important that one isn't better than the other. It's all what is suitable to our life.
Right.
But if you are, as you put in the example, if you feel that you should be having a 10-man operation or a big business, but you're stuck in a one-man operation, the first thing you need to investigate is your mindset, is whether there is fear around growth. When I speak to entrepreneurs, they very often speak about being a growth entrepreneur but act like a lifestyle entrepreneur. So so let me give you an example of that. So we're going to be speaking to Melissa just now. So the question I would ask her is, if in her language she says if you want to do something properly, you've got to do it yourself. I'm afraid to employ people in case they steal my recipes or my ideas or my clients.
The same quality control.
They want to they copy. That's fear. That's living in fear, and that's a lifestyle entrepreneurial point of view, is to keep it small and under control. A growth entrepreneur wants at all costs to ensure that other people are able to do things and puts the right controls in place, and the value is delivered through other people, not through themselves. And that's the fundamental difference, is where the value lies. Does the value lie in you, or does the value lie in the business? And very often...
And isn't that just a perception?
No, it's strategic. In other words, you design your business according to that. Because if you want to keep control, then you will have that control. If you want to be the growth entrepreneur, strategically you have to put in place the people, the systems, the processes, the training, all those things in order to do that properly, so that you don't spank the statement, if you want to do something properly, you've got to do it yourself. Okay. So it's a very important, first of all, you understand where you're at, and often entrepreneurs say they want to be one thing, but honestly, deep down, they don't want to be. They want to be a lifestyle, not a growth entrepreneur. And it's all very well. If you're a lifestyle entrepreneur, then your focus needs to be about specialization, becoming the best at that thing, so people come to you. It's because you're selling hours for money. So you want to get as many hours, as much money for your hour as possible. The heart surgeon selling his hour for far more than the GP.
So you're a growth entrepreneur, aren't you?
I'm definitely a growth entrepreneur.
And you've always been that way. Is this how you were born?
Yeah.
Were you the kid who was selling lemonade on a table on the corner of the street?
That's also some mythology. That's part of the mythology around entrepreneurship. That yes, I did that a little later on in life, but it doesn't mean that if you weren't that kid that you aren't. Once again, I'm reluctant to go to definitions of what is or what isn't. But I've certainly been entrepreneurial from school days, and I've never worked for anyone really since school. So I think I'd be in my only sort of attempt in a family business, like I don't really do well with authority. So
how do you know that though?
Because
if you've never worked for someone.
Well, because in the family business, I bucked every single sort of everything that I was asked to do. I wanted to do it differently, and I was wrong, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, I mean, obviously, I mean, there's room to make mistakes. That's how you learn. I'm just so interested to see, was this behavior encouraged at home? Your parents? Did you speak up? I mean, when you were in class, if your teacher said something that you didn't agree with, were you afraid to speak up?
I promise you, if my teachers had to do the least likely to succeed, I'd definitely be on that list.
No,
yeah,
really?
Without a doubt. I was a below average performer at school. I scraped into university. Literally, the lowest amount of points you could get into university, I got. And I only woke up at the end of my third year where the lights came on, and then got into honours and came top of that class. But if you look at my school marks, they were D's and E's and the occasional C. If I got a C, I will yeehaw, look how clever I am.
Is it because you just weren't stimulated? It didn't interest you? Your mind was somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, today I've got kids, and there's all sorts of interpretations of what type of kid I was. Maybe it was ADD, maybe it was sensory integration disorder, maybe it was a whole bunch of other things. Maybe I was asthmatic as a kid, and I was on all sorts of medicine which might have lowered my sort of sensitivity to the world. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it worked. It turned out okay. So that's sort of that. All's well that ends well.
Now I'm just trying to identify, the traits. So, did you dream about going into your own business?
No.
Did you think?
Yes.
Did you? Okay, so did you used to say, okay, I want to own a yacht one day, or I want to live the life, or I'm just trying to identify. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that he always dreamt that he would be, Mr. World. That was it. Mr. Universe, whatever it is with the huge. He never doubted that. So we read all of these people who talk about the power of the mind and visualization and seeding and the importance of that. Was it a dream for you?
So let me just talk about that visualization. And it wasn't a dream. So to give you the straight answer, it wasn't a dream. To be in my own business, certainly. What I've produced thus far was certainly no dream before. It's part of a recent dream, but not. So, in my first book, which was Lose the Business Plan, I touched on this whole thing about visualization. And in my research with entrepreneurs, I found they fell into two categories. Those that had the ability to visualize, and those who said, no, I didn't visualize, I just kept doing the same things again and again and again. So, for me, I just made sure if in my business I delivered quality, the customer, I cared about the customer more than anything else, and my location was right. And whenever business I was in the food industry, that's what I did, and I did very well. So that is what I've called your full philosophy. It's your philosophy on life and how you run your business, and it filters how you make decisions. So you do the same thing all the time, no matter what your business is in. What business you're in, you approach it in the same way every time because it's congruent with your philosophy. So there are many successful entrepreneurs who haven't visualized or haven't had a vision to that extent, have become successful by doing the same thing all the time. In other words, the same philosophical inputs into them. So for example, in my full philosophy is unique, replicable and profitable. So I'll do nothing in Raizcorp that it isn't driven by how's this different. How can I grow this replicability, and how it isn't making a profit or not. So if it's not making profit, it's not replicable, and it's not unique, then my driver is to make it that. So I'm driven around that. This whole thing around vision is a very dangerous thing because it's pretty rah-rah, and I read in too many books on entrepreneurship this thing around vision, and entrepreneurs who don't have that ability get quite intimidated by that because they're saying, look, honestly, and it's the truth for me, all I want to do is make this month end. That's my vision. Make this month end, no more. And they feel less than because they don't have this grand vision to take over the world. So what I say to those entrepreneurs is that your ability to visualize grows as you become more successful. So it's like kicking the can forward a little bit. You reach month end, and now you're thinking about, like, I want to make a profit by the end of this year. And then when you make a profit, then I want to make like 10 million rand profit. And then when I do that, then I want to open up branches further. And then your vision starts to grow with your success. And that's okay too. Because there's too much in the literature and too much mythology in entrepreneurship about what you should be doing and shouldn't be doing, and that damages more than it does good, I think.
You spoke about the vision and success, but along the way we have many challenges and sometimes many failures. And I think the importance is to dust yourself off, get up, and move forward. Have you had many failures, and how do you deal with those failures?
Yeah. So. Just on that, just to sort of bridge the last question to this, I do have a vision. I have a huge international vision for what I do. So it's not that I don't have it now, but I certainly didn't think of it 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's grown with me. I've written a book called What to Do When You Want to Give Up.
Yeah.
I mean, I have failed, I think, more times than everyone in the studio right now. And for me, I have an interesting relationship with failure, because no one likes to fall. But there's a sense of when you fall, that what's the value in this? Why is this happening? What have I learned? So my first business, which was called the New York Sausage Factory, was an absolute failure, and I had every single privilege that you could have. I had a tertiary education, a private education. I had a mentor. I had a financier. I mean, there was nothing that I could pin my failure on. And I tried very hard as a 23-year-old to say it was because of, and I couldn't find anything. And that was one of the most important moments in my life as an entrepreneur, because at 23 I learned that I was the reason for my success or failure. It wasn't extraneous to me, it was internal. And that has then driven every every failure that I've had since then, and will continue to do. My relationship with it will be like, what is my part in this? What can I learn? What can I do better? This is part of my journey. So what? Get up, go again. Like that it's an attitudinal thing to failure. I don't see it as the end, or I certainly don't see it as embarrassing, or I'm not ashamed of it. In a weird way, I'm proud of my failures. I put it out there. I mean, I've written a book on my failures. Yeah.
Listen, I think it's key. Everybody fails at some point in their lives, on every level of their lives, really.
Yeah.
So do you think that's something that you can work on, your ability to handle failure in a positive way? Because there's some people who will give up. Maybe they've always had a dream of opening their own business. They try, it doesn't succeed, and then they give up.
Yeah, so I think you certainly can. I think it's about working it out. It's really a mindset, and no matter what I say on the air today, unless you have that ka-ching, that light bulb moment, it's not really going to happen for you. And it'll happen. It doesn't mean if it doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen in the future either. So you wait for that moment to realize that you're in control or not in control. And when you get that, and then you also know what you're not in control with, and you're comfortable with sort of the relationship between the two. When it comes to wanting to give up, for me, I'm very pro-life when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I have a very, very strong belief that for as long as you keep asking different questions and you keep getting different answers, you keep going. It's when you can't ask different questions, when the same questions are coming up again and again and again, and the same answers are coming up again and again, it's time to consider giving up. But having said that, it's very important then to reach out to your resources around you. And often we don't see resources as resources. We don't see our family as a resource, or we don't see our friends as a resource, or we don't see that uncle who's been in business as a resource. And so it's very important from a mindset point of view for you to have that ability to see everything differently. So an entrepreneur, when they see a cup, you might see it as a cup. An entrepreneur sees it as a cup. They see it as something to draw a circle with. If I break it, I can use it as a weapon. I can use it as a vase. It's not just one thing. There's so much you can do with that thing. And the same thing you do with all the resources around you.
So we're going to be looking at starting business. I mean, I started off talking about this bleak outlook in terms of economy, and just really looking at unemployment, and maybe there are people out there who are thinking the job market's very difficult. Maybe I've just got to pursue that idea that I once had. Maybe I should be starting my own business. Maybe I should cash in on a policy that I have and take the plunge and do it. And I think that's why it's important to have this discussion today, because maybe there's certain questions that people should be asking themselves before they even take that step, before they leave their job, or before they cash in, or before they even consider pursuing that particular dream or idea that someone's come to them with.
So the answer to that really is the same answer to the question, are entrepreneurs born or made? Because you're saying, well, you know, everyone is in this position saying, well, am I entrepreneurial or am I not? And for me, from my research, there's 5 things that need to be in place. There's 5 conditions that need to be in place before you precipitate into an entrepreneur. Now, let me tell you where I get this from.
Okay.
About 7-8 years ago, there was a piece of research that came out of the US which showed that the most successful first-time entrepreneurs were 60 years and older. Now that breaks the whole question of are they born or made, because at 55 you take a photograph of this individual that were working at some big corporate and say, are you entrepreneurial? You're not. Of course you're not. You're a corporate person. But 5 years later they were one of the most successful echelons of entrepreneurs. Second of all, you'd say, were they born that way? Well, at 55 you're not exactly born that way. So it breaks the question. So that sort of provoked me in a big way to say, well, people are looking at this all wrong.
Yeah.
So this is based on many years of being involved in this space. This is my belief around that there needs to be 5 conditions present in order for you to precipitate into a trading entrepreneur. And let me just define that quickly. You spoke about, I've got this idea. Everyone's got an idea. You had 5 today. You had 10 in the last month. We've all got those ideas. The difference between that idea coming from an idea into a trading business is the following. Number 1, every single entrepreneurial business starts off with either a crisis in your life, okay, or you see an opportunity. No business starts without it. Okay, so if you don't see an opportunity, or there's no crisis that's forcing you into that, well, it ain't going to happen. Number 2, you have to have a tolerance for pain. Every day as an entrepreneur, you wake up, you're too old, you're too young, you're too black, you're too white, you're too tall, you're too short, you always do something. Okay, and if you don't have the ability to withstand all that criticism and the negativity that comes to you as you're starting a business, you don't move through from that idea. Because you go to your mom and say, Mom, I've got this great idea, and it's X, Y, and Z, and they go, yeah, I've seen that before somewhere. Or like, why don't you just stick to what you do? And not being able to withstand that pain, that negative feedback. That's number 2. So all entrepreneurs that precipitate have got a level of tolerance for pain. And I can talk about that for a long time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Then there's the tolerance for risk is number 3. There's a tolerance for risk. Now, let's take those 60-year-olds, and let's take a 23-year-old. So a 23-year-old's unencumbered in the sense, and I'm generalizing here, they might or might not have a varsity degree, they've got a car, that small little car, and they're living in a flat that's rented. Okay. No kids, nothing. There's really not much.
They're pretty free.
They're pretty free,
yeah, they
right?
can make decisions, make mistakes.
Look at me. I'm 46. I've got 2 kids in a private school. I've got a bond. The bank owns my house. You know, like I've got a different risk profile to the 23-year-old. But let's look at the 60-year-old now. Now the 60-year-old is more like the 23-year-old. Kids are out of home. Okay, the house is paid off. They've got an established network. Like everything's different. Their risk profile is closer to the 23-year-old than mine. So if the idea,
they have wisdom.
They have all those things, right? So if the idea, if we both have see the same opportunity, let's assume we have the same tolerance for pain. They're more likely to go for it than me, as the 46-year-old with all these encumbrances, right? So that's number 3 is tolerance for risk. Tolerance for condition number 4 is a belief in your ability to muster resources. Not your ability to muster resources, but your belief in your ability to muster resources. So often when you hear entrepreneurial stories, they will tell you that after, say, if I knew then what I know now, I would never have done it. It's a self-belief that I can pull it all together, that it needs to be present for you to do it. And often, just coming to the lifestyle and growth in the survivalist, it's got to do with like I can get other people to do that. I can't do this, but I know this friend, he can do that, and I don't have money, and I can try and get money from this guy, and I put it all together. I muster these resources, and I believe I can. So the belief part is far more important. And the last condition that needs to be present is your ability to learn and iterate. Okay, and this I get very, very often when entrepreneurs come and they go to market and they say they want to sell this product or service, and the market says, you know, it's too expensive, or it's, you know, we only need half, etc. And they keep going at it. So if they're not reading the feedback and then iterating, actually doing something about it, coming back and say, you said to me that you wanted it half the size and half the price, I've managed to do that, here it is, then the product never gets to market, because they're not listening, okay, and they're not iterating, they're not learning and iterating. So unless those 5 conditions are present, for me, you don't move from a nascent entrepreneur with the idea to the trading entrepreneur.
Alon, when you talk about the learning, are you talking about listening to the market and compromising?
Well, no, listening and creating a solution based on the feedback.
Okay.
So compromise is the wrong word.
Okay.
It's creating a solution based on the feedback. And that, I mean, that's a different conversation about internal locus of control, etc. But it's listen to the market, okay, and give them a solution.
So I love watching The Dragon's Den. I'm sure you've watched it as well. I think it's on BBC.
I don't watch TV,
oh,
but
you don't?
I have watched one. I have to tell you, I have watched one.
It is wonderful. So it's all of these incredible business owners in the UK, and they all have expertise, right? But for our listeners who don't know, and there's somewhere they interview a whole lot of people who have got these business ideas, and they decide whether they're going to buy into it or not. And I remember watching one where you had a woman who was so passionate about raising a toilet seat, because she believed that, you know, you've got one size, and to have to build a whole new toilet was very expensive, and all you had to do was do 1 or 2 things and raise the toilet seat. And some of them were saying, well, that's a good idea. Others were saying, well, it's not such a fantastic idea. And then they asked her how much she had actually invested. This woman had invested a huge amount of money. And all of the dragons, so they call them, the entrepreneurs, turned around and said, you need to walk away. You need to walk away. How do you know when to walk away?
She might not have been listening. So there has to be a market need, you know, and that's really what. So for me, you know, I'm going to answer it in a weird way. Too often, another myth in entrepreneurship is that you need money to start a business. It's not true. You need a compelling economic right to exist. Okay, you need a compelling economic right to exist. Money will flow after that. And what that
compelling economic right to exist.
I like that. And so that means that you have to be fulfilling a want or a need at a profit. Okay, and that's why the economic right to exist. You're fulfilling it at a profit. So, you know, we can all give away things below market price, and everyone will consume those goods. And you might say there's demand, but it's not economical to do that. So you have to have a compelling economic right to exist. What might have happened in that is that they might have said, well, there's no real market opportunity where there's a demand at a profit. That they couldn't see through how to make it profitable, or she hadn't convinced them how to solve that need in a profitable way. That's what I haven't seen that episode, but that's the only answer I could give if I was a dragon looking at the raised toilet seat.
Because we read the books. I mean, was it the Outliers who said it's 10,000 hours of... Because you also spoke about go for it, repetition, repetition, keep going. But there has to be a point when you turn around and you say this is not viable. And I think it's a very important and a very honest place to be when you're not just emotional about it, but you just have to be logical and clear and unemotional.
Yeah, I think,
and that's not easy.
I think there are the answer to give up is definitely an option in many times, but to my earlier point, it's only when you haven't asked yourself different questions and got different answers. So very often, let's use the toilet seat lady. She probably has asked herself the same question, many times, and she's not asking herself different questions. Yeah. So it's also.
And she's maybe so far into it.
Yeah,
She doesn't want to let it go.
You know, in the first book, I've got a chapter on don't be married to your idea, because too often we get married to ideas and we don't want to get divorced from them.
Okay. Well, we're going to be everything that you've told us. We're going to be relating to a real life situation. We're going to be asking the real questions, because we have someone in the studio who's going to be sharing her business ideas, and Allon is going to be helping her through that process. And hopefully, on that journey, you will be asking yourself that question. If you're looking to start your own business, if you're currently in a business and you just can't get it off the ground, you know, I'm really hoping that a show like this is going to take you to that next state. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with Allon and with our next guest, Melissa Hunt.
Hi, my name is S.V. Prinsloo, and I'm the HOD of IT Integration at Bridwin Preparatory School in Melrose. We started using study apps about 6 months ago and have seen astonishing results. We were quite amazed to see how quickly the kids have been able to use study apps and the benefits it has shown with regards to reinforcing what they've already learned inside the classroom. I would highly recommend study apps for any school.
Studyapps.co.za. Well, if you've just tuned in, welcome. This is Conversations with Niki, where you are entertained, informed and inspired. Thank you very much for tuning in. Our syndication partner listeners, welcome on board. That's Bay FM in PE, Wild Coast FM in East London, Knysna FM, MC 90.3 FM in Plet, West Coast FM in Namibia, Kawi FM in Port Alfred, and here in Joburg, Eldo's FM and Chai FM. I am giving away the Colpad 2 7-inch Wi-Fi tablet at the end of the show, so keep listening for that. And we're talking about being in your own business, starting your own business. Maybe you've been thinking for a long time, you've got this brilliant idea, or someone's approached you with a fantastic idea. Perhaps you've started your own business and you've been going at it, and it's been blood, sweat and tears, and it's just not taking off, and you don't know whether to let go or whether to keep trying, or maybe just change the strategies. And I'm hoping that today's show is just going to make that picture a lot clearer for you. I have in the studio Allon Raiz, the CEO and founder of Raizcorp, and he's been talking and identifying the different types of entrepreneurs, starting your own business, the attitudes, and also the conditions. And we're going to be applying all of those concepts to a real life situation, because I have in the studio Melissa Hunt, who has got a brilliant idea when it comes to business, and well, we just need to take it to that next level. So Melissa, welcome. Thanks for sitting so patiently. I saw you furiously writing down notes. Have you been taking notes and going to apply all of them?
Well, one thing I've learnt, Niki, is when you're in the company of millionaires, you take notes.
Niki, I didn't know you were a millionaire.
What did I? Felt quite nice, I've got to say. Melissa, I think let's just give a background, because there's a reason why you've started your business. And you know, Allon was talking about the 5 conditions that you have to think about before starting your own business, being the entrepreneur. And one of them was a crisis or opportunity. And yours is really a crisis.
Definitely.
Can you just tell us about your son, Aiden, and why
sure.
it's a crisis for you?
Well, Aiden was born on the 17th of September in 2009. And everything was fine, but we just noticed something a little bit different with his foot. And on further investigation, we went to the orthopedic surgeon, and millions of questions later, we were referred to a neurologist. And we discovered that he's got something called Costello syndrome. It's a very rare genetic disorder. He's only the 2nd diagnosis in the country, and it's basically you know, I've got to scan his tummy every 3 months or so for abdominal tumours, which could be cancerous. He's got a thickened left ventricle wall in his heart, so I scan that every 9 months or so. He's got something called calcaneo valgus feet. So you and I will walk, you know, straight. He walks almost on the inside of his ankles. And we've tried to correct that using Botox injections with plaster of Paris. It hasn't worked, so chances are we're probably going to have to operate at a later stage when his bones have hardened. He's 4 now. And one of the major things that, I mean, being a first-time mom, I was clueless. He had major eating difficulties. And he only started eating solid food around 11 months. And to this day, he still drinks pureed food out of his bottle morning and night. He started eating normal food now, which is very encouraging and very exciting. But when he was diagnosed, we were encouraged to do all sorts of therapy. He even had sensory sensitivity, which was horrific. I mean, I'd put on
Is
the
this
blender.
part of the syndrome, or was this on top of everything?
It was on top of the syndrome.
Okay,
And
sure.
so anytime I switched on a blender or he heard a loud noise, he would just scream in absolute fear and, you know, absolutely freak out. And so I've had to put him through extensive occupational therapy, speech therapy, physiotherapy, all the doctors. I mean, he's got more doctors than we do fingers and toes. And he's just such an awesome child because he's grown so much through all of this therapy. I'd say the occupational therapy has been the best for him. Now, what I actually learned how to do was to change his neuro pathways.
Really?
So, yeah, like when the blender went on, instead of making it a big hoo-ha and taking him out the room, I started making music out of it. So we'd go blend, 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 blend to a beat, you know.
Yes.
And all of a sudden the blender became fun, you know. And it was just learning how to cope with these things. But of course, with all of this, you know, comes medical bills, which the medical aid didn't cover. That was in excess of about 30 grand a month. And at the time of his diagnosis, my mom had been working on a recipe for cakes, microwave cakes. And as he was diagnosed, we thought, well, you know what? This is our opportunity to make sure that these cakes are taken out into the market. And we now have a product called Raising Aiden Cakes and Cupcakes.
Raising
which
Aiden Cakes.
microwave. A cake will microwave in 3 minutes and the cupcakes in 2.5 minutes. So, and I have to tell you...
And you have fully formed cakes and cupcakes in those few minutes?
Yes, they are. And I have to tell you, they are delicious.
All right. Well, there are some in the studio. Alon, I hope you enjoy cupcakes. He's looking at them.
I do too much, and therefore I'm drinking the water.
Okay, well, you may have to taste. Solomon, you may have to taste. He's not arguing, and I don't argue when it comes to cupcakes. But so, I mean, I'm just thinking about being a first-time parent, how daunting that is, just in itself. And then to be faced with this and such a rare syndrome, and the escalating bills, and obviously wanting to give your son the very best that you possibly can. So financially, just finding a way. Did you have a moment when you thought, I'm going to give up, give in? Or was it just, we're going to find a solution to this problem?
Niki, you know, I'm probably one of those people who is an eternal optimist. And I did go through my stages of grieving. It had its challenges. It really did. And at times I still think, wow, you know. But he has been such a gift. Such a gift. And being the eternal optimist that I am, I'm entrepreneurial in nature, I think.
Okay.
And I haven't had a boss since about 2001. And quite frankly, I think if I were to be employed, they'd fire me after the first hour. So it was just a natural progression to actually go into something that I could provide the marketplace with. Okay. And yes, it was the perfect opportunity, really.
So when did you start the cupcake business?
I kind of had a stop-start scenario with this. I started this soon after he was diagnosed in 2011, in March, and it was going really, really well. I was actually on the verge of going into Pick and Pay with it. Suzanne Ackerman was keen to put it on the shelves and what have you, and it was just at the time where I became a single mom, and so everything was just too much, and I kind of put it on the back burner. It was always there, and eventually towards the end of last year I thought, you know what, I've got to make this happen. And I started up towards the end of November, but with my marketing, I focus a lot on schools and corporates and you know, moms and all of that stuff. And a lot of people go away during the December period. So I got started, and I managed to make a little bit of money again with that. But my real marketing drive has started this year, and people really receive it so well because it is a good product. People love it, and it's instant gratification, you know.
Well, I'm going to hand you over to the professional over here who deals with entrepreneurs and helps people with business. And Allon, what questions do you have for Melissa?
I have so many. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Alon.
Just by the way, these are what flavor cupcakes
I've
are
got
these?
chocolate and vanilla, but seeing as it's Valentine's Day tomorrow, I decided to zhuzh them up and make them all fabulously pretty.
Aren't
with
they
glitter
exquisite,
and
Allon?
hearts.
I mean, isn't this beautiful?
Yeah.
And this just took how long?
Oh, it was quick. It was this morning.
You see. All right, Allon, over to you. Oh, he's
All
looking.
right.
Don't drool on the microphone, please.
So Melissa, my first question is like why this, and this thing, your mom was in it, so there was both a crisis and an opportunity at the same time, and you saw your mom's recipe as a resource.
Definitely,
right? So
yeah.
you saw that as a resource to you, and your mom obviously as a resource as well. So you say this is a good product. So what makes this product special? Like why is this better than the other?
It's the only
cupcakes?
microwavable product on the market at the moment, cupcake-wise. If you go onto the shelves,
Well, what does that mean? That it's ready made and then I microwave it, or I microwave it and then it becomes
I
a
sell the
cupcake?
pre-packaged dry cake and cupcake mix in a bag. And what it does, it's so simple. I've got the recipe on the back. All you do is you throw in the dry ingredients that I've provided for you, and all you do is you throw in 3 eggs, some milk, some oil, a dash of vanilla, and you mix it up with the spoon even. If you want to bake the cake, you can bake the cake in the bowl that you mix it, which is fabulous. So easy. You pop it in the microwave, 3 minutes later you've got a cake. Or 2.5 minutes later you've got cupcakes. And most cupcake or cake recipes, they take at least 15 minutes to cook in the oven. You're looking at electricity costs, etc. when you're baking in the oven.
Time
Okay.
is a factor.
Time.
Time
And
is
of
a factor.
course, if you're a mommy with children who want to bake, it's just far too long to wait 15 minutes watching these cupcakes to rise in the oven.
Okay, I want to get lots of questions in, Melissa. So I asked you what makes a product special, right? And you said it's the only. Say those words again. It's the only
microwavable cupcake pack available
in South Africa.
in South Africa.
Okay,
Yes.
why should I believe you?
Well, you can go and look, darling.
Good point, though.
No,
Good
why should I
point.
believe you? Where does
Okay.
it say that? I'm looking at your packaging. Where does it say that on your page? Does it say that?
It doesn't. You're right.
Okay, so why
First
should I
point.
why should I believe you? Okay, and why is that important in terms of the time and electricity, etc. So you missed an opportunity right here in your product up front. The biggest differentiator you haven't communicated.
Right.
Okay. So what you're communicating on the packaging, and of course no one can see this, is that it's a beautiful sticker with Raising Aiden, with a picture of Aiden sitting on a cupcake, and then your details. Now, if I look at the packaging, and I'm certainly no packaging specialist, but if I look at this with Melissa, Mom, and your cell phone number, what you're communicating with me is that this is a small time operation, because you've got your mobile number, not to mention all the weird phone calls you might get in the middle of the night. That you're communicating now for me that this is a home job. Okay. Now, for me, I'm not a buyer of cupcakes. And I'm certainly not a baker, but I would want to get a sense that this is a quality product, and the packaging is great, but you're mixing messages with me here, because you're telling me this was made in somebody's kitchen at home. That's the sort of getting 2 messages. So first of all, on that, I would definitely get a landline if you wanted a landline for orders. And it's great that you've got that your URL is raisinaiden.co.za, not at MWeb or at Icon or some other URL. That's fantastic. And you've got a website. So just clean up the packaging now and get it. I mean, it's as simple as getting a landline.
Yeah.
Okay. And today with technology, that can be forwarded to a cell phone. So that's on the packaging. So who buys from you? Who buys this?
At the moment, it's mostly mommies. So I market my product. I go into places like hairdressers.
So who's buying from you?
Well, the clients at the hairdressing stores or the...
So who's paying you the money? The hairdresser or the clients at the hairdresser?
Well, the clients pay the money to the hairdresser,
so
who then pays
you?
me,
Okay.
the hairdresser.
The hairdresser. So it's very important that we start understanding the value chain of who's buying, okay, and who's using, okay. So the user's not necessarily the buyer, okay, and they might have different motives for why they're buying,
right?
Okay. So let's just talk about your hairdresser scenario. So you walking, just correct me if I'm wrong here. You walking in and saying, "Hi, this is my story. This is the story about Aiden. I'm Melissa. I'm his mom, and I'm looking now to sell my product in order to fund Aiden's medical bills." Right? I mean, it goes something like that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then you say, "Will you take 30 or 20 or whatever on consignment?" Is that correct?
That's what I do, yes.
And then you sell it, and then I'll come past and pick
That's
it up.
right.
Is that the model?
That's
right.
what's worked for me so far.
And so for the buyer, in inverted commas, the consignment holder, there's no risk.
No risk at all, no.
But there is the fact that if it gets stolen in there, that they might be liable for that, and they're a little worried about that. So, do they make a margin on it? Do they make a profit, make up a markup on it?
No, they don't. They hear Aiden's story, and most are very willing to take on the consignment.
Okay. So, and do you speak to one or all of the hairdressers, or do you speak to just
I
one?
usually speak to the owner or the manager, and I make sure that they've got a few of Aiden's flyers available to give to whoever comes in, whoever shows interest in the packs that are displayed, perhaps on their countertop. And yeah, so they've got the story.
Okay, here's another thought. And now I know this is going to be tougher to do than I'm saying. So I'm a very practical person. So if I take that scenario right now, the way that I would think through it is this: is that your buyer is the owner of the hairdresser. The sub-agents, so that's your agent. The sub-agents are all the other hairdressers. The first thing that you need to do is everyone needs to know the story, not just the owner. There has to be a way that you can tell that story in a compelling way in the morning. So you'd arrive there and say, "This is what's going on." I would then offer a margin to the hairdresser. My guess is most of them won't take it.
Yes.
But it talks to the fact that this is a commercial relationship as well. There's something in it for them, and it talks to what they're trying to do. I would then take every email address of every one of those hairdressers and say, you to me are my sub-agents. I'm going to keep you informed about what's happening with Aiden, and on a 2-weekly basis or a monthly basis, I'm going to just give you an update as how much money we've raised. So keep them part of the story, because if they're doing that, because it's going to be all fresh in their mind in the first month, but by the second month and the third month they're thinking about other things.
True. So
it's about keeping the story top of mind, and we have too many stories out there that are off front page of the paper today and forgotten by tomorrow. So that is your responsibility, to keep the story alive in the minds of your agents and your sub-agents. And I'm going to talk to you in that language, because you've got to see them there in that way. And there has to be a commercial imperative for them, which they can choose to take or not to take. But I would think around that.
Sure.
Then you're going to have to see what is it, who's buying? Because now I ask you, who's buying and then who's using. Who's buying is the hairdresser, who's using is the client. Okay. How does that information translate to the client? So the hairdressers are obviously telling them and saying, "Have you seen this?" and they're telling the story, right? How do you know about the quality of that storytelling, or if it's happening every time?
Yes, you don't, which is why I make sure that I leave the flyers. And so, if you're having your hair done, or just sitting there, while you're not chatting to the hairdresser, you've got something which is in front of you which you might pick up and read. Okay. But it's not guaranteed. Okay,
so you're going to have to think through that. Okay, now I just want to change tack completely and talk about the economics here. You get into your car. We just heard right at the beginning of this interview about the price
petrol
hike in petrol. That's going to cost you money. Then not only do you have to go and to drop it off, you have to pick up the cash, and then your time whilst it's there.
Yes.
The thing that many entrepreneurs make the mistake of, is they don't cost in their time and the logistical costs.
Yeah.
So you might have said, well, all my input costs for this and I'm making this up, cost me 10 Rand, I'm going to sell it at 20 Rand. Okay? Okay, and you're thinking you're making 100% markup. But then then I'd ask you, well, how much would you charge if you had to work for me? How much would you charge an hour? And you might say, I'll work for you for 300 or 400 or 500 Rand an hour. Whatever that number is, you have to go take that amount of hour, your hour, into, and you have to cost that into your distribution, because if not, you're running at a loss.
Right.
Okay. Now, of course, you've got market pressures in terms of what the market can withstand, but it forces the question of how do I bring down or how do I increase my efficiency of distribution?
Right.
So is it possible that in a shopping center where there's a hairdresser, I've got 5 other things. There's a hairdresser, there's a this, there's a that, and instead of going to one place to drop off for one hairdresser, I'm looking more broadly and I'm saying, well, there's other potential distribution points within the same place or in a walking distance. So instead of dropping off 10, I'm dropping off 50. Now you're amortizing that hour into 50, not into 10.
For sure.
Okay. So you've got to be thinking from a commercial point around that point of view. The next question I want to ask you is what are you resisting? And this is a deep question, and it's got to do with the business. Okay, I'm not talking about your personal life. So what are you resisting in this business right now, and why? What? There's something that you're resisting doing. What is it?
That's quite interesting, because I've actually just learnt about something called the financial thermostat, where, like an air conditioner, you know, if the temperature of the room gets too high, the aircon kicks in and lowers the temperature.
Right. And
same as if it gets too cold, it kicks in and it makes the room warmer. And I've learned that, especially entrepreneurs, well, everybody has it, but we have a financial thermostat. So we suddenly become more and more successful, but our belief systems have, like, whether we even are aware of them or not, our belief systems start kicking in and saying, you know what, you don't deserve this wealth, you don't deserve this.
And
this
I'm pointing
good
at
life.
her for those of you.
Alon is pointing. It's like that ka-chang point.
And I have to be honest, I've hit that financial thermostat a few times, and I start to self-destruct. And since I've become aware of it, I'm hoping that I don't allow that to happen again.
Okay, so that is very common in entrepreneurs. I won't say in all entrepreneurs, but in most entrepreneurs. I've never heard the term thermostat, but it's self-belief is the key governor of your success. And in the first book, Lose the Business Plan, I talk about my shower scene. It's not a very exciting thing to imagine, but it's something that throughout my struggle, and I just want you to understand that I took a very long time to get to a point where I could even begin to call myself succeeding. I don't believe I'm successful. I'm in the process of succeeding. But in that thing, I had my shower scene was every day. I went through a ritual of I may, I can, I will, I am. I may, I have the ability to do it. So you have to look and say, can I do it? I have the ability to make this successful. I can. I may, I have the right to. Sorry, I'm mixing this up. I may, I have the right to. No one has a right to success more than you. I don't have more right to wealth than you, and you don't have more right to wealth than myself. So I may. Okay, I have the right to it, and you tell yourself I have the right to it. The second is that I have the ability. I will, it has got to, and then when you say I have the ability, you have to think all I have to do is distribute, as you mentioned in the break, to the likes of Pick and Pay and the chains, and this is how I can do it. I have the ability, it can be done. I will is I have the will, and you certainly have the will.
I do.
And I will is the affirmation that I will do it. And I am is that when I visualize myself doing it, and I see myself succeeding in that space. So I, for the longest time, and still do, every single morning, see myself in a successful position. So we spoke about visualization. I have a far shorter term view of myself, seeing myself receiving that email saying, we'd just like to inform you, you've just won that, you were successful in that contract, and we look forward to meeting with you to discuss the details. I see myself receiving that email. I feel what I feel like when I do receive that email. I'm in that moment. I close my eyes when I do that. I may, I can, I will, I am. Because for me, what I'm picking up just is a deservedness issue, which you've picked up, and that to me is I like the thermostat.
What's it called? The
financial thermostat.
But it's your belief in your ability to deserve it. Now, because you think you're playing play, that this is play. I just want you to know that every entrepreneur thinks that for the longest time.
Wow.
Okay, it's not just you. Most entrepreneurs, myself included, for the longest time, thought everyone was going to find out. Okay.
I love the honesty, Alon.
Yeah,
because people can relate to this.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just me. Every single success. I remember Robbie Brosen from Nando's spoke to me about the fact I think he had 100 stores at the time, and he thought he felt it was all stuck together with sticky tape and chewing gum. And he found out how fragile it was at the time. Like we all feel that. That's why we become successful. Okay, because there's a great book called Only the Paranoid Survive. We have to remain in that paranoia. Now you have to manage the dissonance between what you portray, your veneer, and what's going on, and make sure that you close that gap very, very quickly.
Right.
So we all, I'm looking at you, you've got makeup, you've done your hair, we all put on a facade. That's what we do every day. I've got gel in my hair. Like we all do that. That's part of how we operate in society. What you've got to do and be conscious of is trying to close the gap between your veneer and the facade, the veneer and who you are, as quickly as possible. So I'm talking about the perception of your packaging here. And what you're saying is that you're saying it's beautiful, but what you're giving me away here is, but I'm really a mom and pop operation. I'm really small, but I want to be big. I can feel that in your packaging. I can see that in your packaging, that you're mixing. So get rid of that. You're big. You've got a mission. You're on a mission. You've got something to do here. You've got a reason to do this. This is a damn good product. It's the only one that does X, Y, and Z, and everyone needs to be buying this. Okay, so that needs to be your attitude.
Wonderful.
And once you really adopt that, all the other stuff about profitability, and we over-focus on the technical skills of entrepreneurship. I'm not saying they're unimportant, but we over-focus on them. What you need to focus on is your relationship with you in regards to making sure this works. Because, as I said in my interview when I was 23, the only reason it's going to fail is not because it's a bad product, and not because the market doesn't understand, it's not because the story isn't compelling, it's not because of anything, it's because of you. And when you get that, like, you will do anything to make sure it doesn't happen.
Is it a process, Alon? Is that a process? Is it with Melissa sitting here, and I can see, and she's nodding, and I can see that what you're saying is really meaning a lot to her. Is that something the I am, the may, can, will, am, do it every single day? So it's a discipline. She's now got to push herself into a next paradigm.
You've hit, Niki, you hit in the first book, I can't remember between it, where they're all mixed up. I think in the first book I called the discipline of motivation. Is that you have to be disciplined to motivate yourself. Like, there's a discipline in motivating yourself. I get up every day, going through my process, and I make myself into a rock star. By the time I get in my car, I'm a rock star. And it's my
I
own
agree.
personal.
It's an attraction principle, actually, because if you're not a rock star, you're not going to attract any bad business.
I certainly don't go and tell everyone, hey, I'm a rock star. But I read all my successes on a daily basis. I go through what. Even I accept my failures. I go through my successes, and by the next by the time I get in my car after my shower, I'm a rock star.
You are raring to go.
Raring to go.
I love that. Listen, you've inspired me, Alon. Melissa, are you inspired?
Oh, totally.
Okay. And are you going to be in touch after this interview? Are you going to chat again? I feel like I've created a date scenario over here. Well, anyway, we're going to keep you updated.
Yes.
Melissa's going to keep us updated, and we'll follow through.
Okay, I will speak to Melissa about what we can do to help her out.
Alon, you've been great and inspired me, and I'm sure many of our listeners, to take that next step. And I think self-belief very important. Now, I've been talking about this Colpad 2 7-inch that I'm giving away. Got a whole lot of people to like my Facebook page. So Melissa, I've got a whole lot of names in this bag, and you're going to put your very elegant, well-manicured nails and hands into this bag, please.
Question is, do I have to give it away or can I keep it?
Alon is watching very closely to make sure you haven't zipped your own name in there, because I could see you wanted to.
Melissa Hunt. Okay, Nanine Levitt.
Nanine Levitt. She has won it.
Girl.
Congratulations, Nanine Levitt. You have won yourself the Colpad 2 7-inch tablet. We will be contacting you, and we will make sure that it arrives safe and sound at your address, at your home, really. It'll arrive at your home. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. Alon, we have to do this again, because I feel like we've just touched the surface, and there are many issues that we need to go more in depth. So I'd love to invite you back. Sure. And Melissa, you as well, because sharing your story about Aiden and taking a product, because what I wanted to say is you're talking about the story of Aiden, and that is such a strong story, but it's such a fantastic product. And I'm going to make everyone jealous and say that as soon as we go off air, we're going to be having one of these cupcakes. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thanks, Alon. Thanks for your time. It's been wonderful. And thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. It has been great. I'm looking forward to being with you again same time next week, and congratulations, Nanine, from me, Niki Seberini. Goodbye.
Hi, my name is Esvia Prinsloo, and I'm the HOD of IT Integration at Bridwin Preparatory School in Melrose. We started using study apps about 6 months ago and have seen astonishing results. We were quite amazed to see how quickly the kids have been able to use study apps and the benefits it has shown with regards to reinforcing what they've already learned inside the classroom. I would highly recommend study apps for any school.
Studyapps.co.za. Conversations with Niki was brought to you by Studyapps.co.za, South Africa's leading education app for tablets.